And I will just say that. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Eric Smith, and we're going to jump right into my favorite horror with author, podcaster, graphic designer, Matt Wildasin. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thank you for having me, Eric. I'm happy to be on.
Thank you for being here. I have a couple questions for you.
Shoot.
So, last year, I don't remember if it went into the beginning of this year, but last year you were on a relatively successful podcast that I think it got canceled, low ratings, I don't know, but you went from that to the Ghostwriters podcast. So how did the Ghostwriters podcast come about?
Well, back when the horror show was coming to an end, I was talking with Mary San Giovanni for a little bit via text, just trying to figure out if there's anything before the horror show ended, if we could have done to maybe help Brian out, because the horror show was a lot of stress in the end of it. And when it was done, like just talking to Brian a couple times off and on afterwards, you could tell how much weight was off of his shoulders. And he was a lot happier. So, I hated the idea of it happening at first, but, seeing someone be happy,
Right.
you kind of have to be happy for them. And so we were talking back and forth, and I said, hey, would you be interested if we started up something new, like something from the ashes of this old show? And she said yes. And Dave Thomas at the time was really into it as well. And then we were saying, like, we need a fourth person. And then one day it just struck. I was like, we got to get Summer Cannon. Why the hell not? So, I reached out to her and she was happy to do it. And I think it was November. So it would have been about a year ago now, possibly, when we did our first episode. And it's been a wild, fun ride ever since. And we've been getting like more interview people lately, and it's been fun. It started off just being something that we wanted to do because we all liked doing podcasting, and we wanted to do a show where we talked a lot about writing and some of the ins and outs of the industry, because as we had spoke before we even did the show, that there really isn't a whole lot of information out there. There are some authors that are very generous and they do like workshops and they put that stuff together, like Cabino Iglesias. He always does workshops. But for the regular person that wouldn't know that those happen, you just go on to Google and you're like, how do I write? How do I become a published author? And like WikiHow comes up with 3 steps, and it's like write book, send book, become author. And it's like, oh, why the hell isn't everybody doing this? So yeah, we wanted to do something that was like focused around writing, but we also wanted to incorporate horror from just about anything. But we've mostly been focusing more on the really bad horror movie aspects of everything. And that we get a kick out of it. I'm really happy to find that I'm in another group of friends that all really enjoy watching bad horror films, because there's just something about it, like,
Yes.
Of course you can watch a good horror movie and you come away from it and you're like, or any good movie in general, and you come away from it and you're like, hey, that was a really good film. I'm going to watch that again and again. But then there's The Rooms and your Birdemics and your Things, and you come away from it and you're like, I'm going to watch it again just because I can't believe this actually exists. And there's, like the Room, for example, mentioning it earlier, there's a plethora of memes and jokes and references and stuff that came from that movie alone. Like that, I always thought The Room was like the Evil Dead equivalent of like the B movie that got popular, but it spawned all this other stuff that references it back. Because, Evil Dead in horror, there's a million things that always references back to that quaint little movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel like The Room's kind of like that version of that.
But with more unnecessary CGI, apparently.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh, wow.
Now, I have not listened to every episode of the Ghostwriters podcast. The formula that I'm most familiar with is you start out by talking about these bad movies,
Yeah.
and then go into the writing advice and things. has that been the formula the entire time, or did it grow and change and sort of coalesce into that?
I made jokes about midway through this year that the show had gotten completely off the rails from the original vision I had, because I wanted it to be this. No, I wanted it to be fun, obviously, and crack jokes and everything. But I was like, I had this idea of it being this more informational, like straightforward type thing, and then it just morphed into it morphed into it's. And don't get me wrong, like I'm saying, it's super fun, but I do crack jokes every now and then where I'm like, I had ideas for this show, maybe winning awards for academia, you know. But yeah, it's pretty much been the talking about horror movies and then going into the writing advice section. Sometimes, every now and then, I think if any of us get the extra time or the gusto, we look up an actual news article of something that's currently happening within the literary world, and we discuss that. But I think that might maybe happen like twice.
Excuse me. Well, I think it's a good balance, because I'm a fan of bad movies,
Mm-hmm.
the right level of bad movie.
Right.
So it's always fun to listen to that first part of the episode, but then I'm also interested in the behind the scenes and the how to and the how things work, so that then you get to the second part of the episode and that works just as well. And of course, your personalities, all of you together, work well.
Oh, thank you.
Really great show. A lot of bad movie stuff out there. Jason Brandt, I don't know if you know, Jason Brandt has on YouTube So Bad It's Good.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Which is fantastic. I love that show. And I had a second one and then I forgot what it was. But a friend of mine on Saturday nights has a bad movie night.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's online. It's on this thing called, I don't know how you pronounce it, Caracal. It's like Caracal.
Oh, okay.
And she sets up a link Saturday night, 8 o'clock, on the Facebook group, puts in the link, and then you just join in. And I mean, sometimes it's actually decent movies, and sometimes they're coincidentally, the most recent episode of So Bad It's Good was Robo Vampire.
Oh God.
And that's just a few months ago. That's one that we watched on Bad Movie Night.
Oh man, that one's a gem, let me tell you. And that's the thing. There are some of these films that I'll say, like, MST3K couldn't even make interesting, you know, because some of the movies they watch, you just know they're terrible, but their banter really helps. But God,
Yes.
there's even some they did where I stop halfway. Some of these movies just so bad. Like, I love you, Mike, and I love you, Joel, but Jesus Christ.
Well, we do. One of the nice things about that is there is the live chat for us. And
Mhm.
so we're all doing the sort of the MST3K thing amongst
That's awesome.
ourselves, which does help with some of the movies.
I'm sure.
All right. So now, you are an author.
Yes.
You are a graphic designer. You just recently, as of this recording, posted a mock-up cover.
Yes.
So let's see. Where do I want to go with this? Well, let's talk about Melancholia.
Okay.
And that's from Death's Head Press. Did you do that cover?
No, I did not. They had a very talented artist that did that cover for me. Danielle Batsheva, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. I always get it wrong. And I'm going to say that for anybody who's listening, if I mention your name and I get it wrong, that's just, I'm terrible at pronouncing names. But yeah, she did the cover for that, and she's very, very talented. I think she does quite a few covers for them, and you know, it's easy to see why. She's very good at what she does.
Okay, so now as a graphic designer, cover designer yourself, did you have any input into that?
I saw that when they sent me the galley, and I said, like, that I'm 100% fine with that. That is a perfect cover. You know, the back cover of that with how the flowers go up the side. I was like, it's so eye-catching. It's one of those things that, like, and this is what I try to do when I design my own things, is I try to make it when you're looking at it, you almost feel like your eyes like open wider because you're trying to get everything in on one glance. And that's what happened for me when I looked at that cover. It was just, it's gorgeous. I don't think I could have done a better cover myself than that. Like it, I didn't even have to second guess that.
Beautiful, beautiful cover.
Mm-hmm.
But one of yours, I'm almost certain, hopefully I won't embarrass myself again. You recently released Horrors Untold Volume 4
Yes.
with the Goosebumps homage cover.
Yes.
And
I love,
that's
I had a fun time making that cover. That was one of the things I was starting to do with the Horrors Untold thing, volumes, because I self-published them myself because it's kind of hard to get short story collections published by even indie publishers, and I understand it. It's kind of like a smaller niche thing, and there are your readers that will pick up any short story collection they see, but it's a lot smaller than your novella and even novelette readers to that extent. So I usually self-publish them myself, and when I started them, the first Horrors Untold looks kind of like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I did the black frame with the little red frame and then a picture from some of the art inside, which, God help me, I tried to replicate the Steve Gemmell art, but it is like the people that can do it, I'm just like, kudos to you, because that is a really hard art style to replicate. But yeah, I've always wanted to do a Goosebumps style cover. And, early on when I started, I really wasn't as confident in my graphic design skills, but as I just kept doing things, I would just make up mock things of covers that already existed and put a spin on it. And I just kept practicing and practicing. And for my other podcast, Grindcast, I do the title cards every week. So I make a different one that's centered around one of the topics that we talk about. So then I kind of go crazy trying to figure out how to Photoshop in and out stuff and move things around and cut and paste it and everything else. So I felt I was finally at that point where I was like, we're going to do this. I'm going to do a Goosebumps style cover. And I think it paid off. I think it looked really good. The picture of the Headless Horseman, I actually painted that. So, because that was another thing. I always wanted to learn how to do acrylic and oil paints. And, some of the early stuff that I've done is no longer existing because I hated it. But you can probably see it in the background here. I kept it up here on my wall, the Headless Horseman painting. So hopefully if people reach out to me for any commissions, that I might be able to do some more painted covers, because it's really fun. I enjoy it a lot.
That cover's fantastic. Excuse me. What do you prefer, oils or acrylics?
Man, I guess acrylic, just in the sense that it's a lot easier to thin out. You don't have to get thinners. You can just use water. It dries a lot faster. I feel like oils also, if you're trying to do any sort of highlighting, say we go like a Bob Ross route and you have like your little dark colored in pine tree that you did with your fan brush, and then you want to put some lighter green on it. With regular oil paint, you have to wait a long time, or that's just going to get all mushy and gross looking. With acrylic, you can literally just blow on it and it gets dry in like minutes. So yeah, I like acrylic.
That was always my choice way back in the day, back in my high school days in art classes. I preferred acrylics myself. Let's see. Oh, so you also relatively recently, I think, had a mock-up cover for a complete volume, I guess you might call it, for the horrors.
Yeah, I've been kicking around the idea of doing like an omnibus, like hardcover, and since Amazon finally decided that they're going to let us poor little pawn authors have hardcovers, I was like, hey, what better time than now to give it a shot? So yeah, the front's just done. I'm trying to make this one look as much like an old leather bound, like a book you'd see in an old library somewhere in the occult section. I'm trying to go for that look. But it's also, holidays are coming up, and I have another project with a friend that's an author as well. His name's Simon Paul Wilson. We're co-writing a book together called Baggage. That's in the editing phase, so I'm working on trying to get that put together. I'm finishing up another book that I'm hoping to send out. Possibly gonna make this other the Backrooms book. Might want to get that out before Christmas. So there's so much going on, and I haven't quite decided, like, do I want to just try and shove it all out the door by Christmas? Because December is when Simon and I were hoping to publish Baggage, and I feel like, though, if I throw too much at once, people are gonna, like, I'm getting kind of tired of this Matt guy. He's put out too much. So I don't know. I really do want to do the hardcover, though. I feel like that would be a cool idea. It's ranking in around almost 600 pages right now, and that's not putting in any of the forwards or introductions. So that's just the stories.
Wow.
So I also wonder how expensive that's going to be. So that's something else I worry about. I might do a limited signed run of it. Might only be like, hey, 30 copies and this is done. So if you want one. So we'll see.
Now, have you, this is kind of an odd question, I think, maybe, but have you noticed, with all the paper shortages and shipping problems, have you noticed any effect of that? Or is that not something you have to worry about because you just put it on Amazon and let them do it?
I haven't personally seen it yet. Now, I'm probably going to soon, because over the next couple months, I have to start ordering copies, because I'm going to go to AuthorCon. That's the Brian Keene's Think Through Scares the Cares, the convention he put together. I got a table for that, and I was just hearing some people say the other day how if you want to get books, it might be a good idea to start ordering them now, because they're not sure if this is going to hit Amazon or not. And it's such a weird thing. And it's such a weird time that we live in when you think about it. It's just, there's so many things that have happened within the past 2 years that I never thought I'd live through in my lifetime. And, we have coin shortages one minute. Now we're going to have paper shortages this minute. And you just kind of think, like, you just got to roll with it. So I'm hoping that Amazon maybe saw this coming, and they kind of did something to have a contingency plan with this, but only time will tell. I know recently, when I had someone try to order some copies for the anthology I had published myself a while ago, Dark Words, stories of urban legend and folklore, Amazon was kind of weird with printing it out. So I don't know if that was like a thing with the paper shortage or not. They were given, their dates were all over the place. First, it was going to take like 3 weeks. Then it was going to take 2 weeks. Then it was going to take 4 weeks. And then the guy got them like after a week of of placing the order. So I don't know.
Weird.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a preferred story length? You've got novellas, I believe, obviously short stories. What works best for you? What do you find yourself being drawn to as far as story length?
I love writing short stories, hence being up to 4 volumes of Horrors Untold. I still want to write. I had that dream of writing like that Stephen King book that's so thick it helps a 3rd grader reach the top of the shelf. You know what I mean? Yeah. I have that dream of reaching that at some point, but I feel in this day and age, like with the current reading market, novellas for horror, at least, are the honeypot. I feel like that's the best length, because you can jam pack it with as much action and dialogue and drama and all that you'd want, and get your scares in, make it very, very effective without having to feel like you might lose your reader at any point. Because I don't know, I hate saying it, but it's the same. I suffer from the same thing. Attention spans are a lot shorter this day and age. I will do that myself. I'll be working on something, and then I'm just like, oh, I should check this thing out. And then I go, and an hour's gone by, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, so I feel like the shorter works are a really good spot. And I like writing shorter works just because I feel like I can pump more things out. And it's, if you have a problem with being prolific, which being prolific is a really important thing to have in this business, sticking to novelettes and short story collections and stuff like that, I would say for somebody starting out is a really good idea. When you start getting to, your higher up stages where they just say, hey, if you give us 2 books a year, you're good, then worry about cranking out, the Bible and stuff like that. But there's authors like Tim Meyer, like, I don't know how the hell he does it. He'll write like a 700-page book and he's like, I did it in a month. And it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, I had just not too long ago read Paradise Club.
Yes.
And then found out that Malignant Summer was 2-3 times the size of that.
Yeah, that's a huge book.
I was actually excited by that.
Yeah.
I will say that Stephen King guy is a little wordy sometimes.
Yeah, he can get a little wordy.
It's a little wordy on occasion.
But Tim Meyer is a really cool dude. His work's really awesome. And I'm impressed by how quick he gets stuff out. I wish I could pump out a book that thick as quick as he does, but that's never going to happen for me.
You got to work at your own pace.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think it might be time to dive into our main feature or whatever I decide to call it. But first, I'm going to do a fake ad because I don't have sponsors. So maybe if I do this, someone will sponsor me someday.
Okay.
So I'm going to say that this episode of My Favorite Horror With is not sponsored by the game Godzilla Tokyo Clash. This is for Funko Games. It's for 2 to 4 players. And you actually play. Here's the little Godzilla that comes with it.
That's cool.
You actually play as either Godzilla, King Ghidorah, Mothra, or Megalon. And you're just trying to take out your opponent. You're smashing buildings, throwing tanks and trains and stuff. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool. Have you played that?
I have played it. Yes.
Oh, okay. I was gifted it for Christmas one year, and the tape is still firmly on the edges. I haven't cracked it open yet.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I'm obviously we're both Godzilla fans, and I've played Godzilla. I like to play every character at least once, but I have not done that yet. I do know that Mothra is not allowed to throw things.
Okay.
Because Mothra's the good character.
I see.
The most good, I suppose you could say.
Right.
So Mothra's not allowed to do anything that would hurt people.
Okay.
The person that plays Mothra gets their points a different way. But yeah, you have each of the creatures has its own specific deck of cards. And it's one of those where you can do the thing on the top of the card or the thing on the bottom of the card. And there's all the figures.
Yeah, the pieces look great.
Yeah, they're really nice. So that's my non-sponsor for this episode.
Come on, Funko, get with it. Sponsor him.
Funko Games wants to send me things and sponsor me. So with that, your choice for this episode was now this is the copy I have, and it says Godzilla 1984 at the top and the Return of Godzilla at the bottom.
Yep.
So that was the choice that you made. So folks out there, there's going to be spoilers because we're just going to talk. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about in this movie. So there's going to be spoilers. If you haven't seen this movie and are worried about spoilers, just pause my video, go watch the movie, and then come back and watch the rest of this.
There you go.
All right, there we go. So, first of all, can you give us just a quick synopsis? What is this movie about?
This movie is, as the title suggests, is the Return of Godzilla. This is supposedly a descendant of the original Godzilla from the 1950s film. And they play this one straight. It's no him versus any other monster. He comes back to Tokyo. It's another. It takes place during the Cold War, so it's because of that other nuclear scare that this movie was done as a solo Godzilla film. Again, as him coming back as a force of nature to fight back against, humans' power with such weapons, essentially. So it's your good old Godzilla comes out of the sea and wrecks the shit out of Tokyo.
Yes. Now there are, I think, 800, 900 Godzilla movies out there.
There's a lot, yeah.
I might be off a little bit. So why did you choose this one in particular?
This was the first film that ever introduced me to Godzilla. My parents had one of those. I don't know if they're laser disc players or not, but the disc comes in like this big plastic case that you just feed into a machine, and then it just takes it out. You have to flip them over halfway through. Sometimes there'll be like four or five of these things to watch one movie. That's what I saw this on. That was the first Godzilla movie ever, and I fell in love with it. Godzilla gave me nightmares too when I was a kid. It was one of those like really love-hate relationship. It was weird. I hated getting nightmares that he was chasing me, but I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, watch Godzilla, It was so strange. But I have such a kinship with this film. I to this day, even if I'm having a bad day or I feel like I can't shut my brain off and I'm trying to go to sleep, I'll put this on in the background, and it's like my melatonin. It just zones me right out. So yeah, just basically because it was the first film. That's why I love it so much. I feel like it's so well done for the time period that it came out in. Now, there are some scenes, especially in this version, and I do want to say that this film was for young Matt trying to track this down when DVDs became a thing. Was nigh impossible because Toho was making movies all through 80s and all through the 90s, and we didn't in the States know it really. We got this movie and we didn't know about Godzilla again until like, oh god, the fucking Roland Emmerich film in 98, I think. That was like the next time we were like, oh yeah, Godzilla's a thing. So this film has, to my knowledge, 5 different versions of it.
Holy moly, I knew there were 2.
Yeah, I own all 5 different versions by mistake as well. Like I would buy different copies because you'd have to get burnt copies because they weren't selling them over here. That Blu-ray that you have is the first time they ever put that movie in this country. And luckily, they actually gave us the Japanese version.
Yes.
Which I thought is funny because the dubbing in this one is completely different from the one that they dubbed for American audiences back in the 80s. Do we just want to get into like the differences? Do you want to do that?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Okay.
We'll jump right into it.
So here's the thing with this. I said it took place during the Cold War. So, the original placement, there were 2 different versions. And as time went on, there were other versions found. It's really funny because if you watch the American version, there's scenes of American actors just spliced in random areas where they're just in a war room watching scenes take place on a big screen and then just kind of making jokes about it. And they get Raymond Burr back. Mm-hmm. He's in it for like 5 minutes, and he just waxes philosophically about how Godzilla is a force of nature and we have to learn to live with him. He doesn't have to learn to live with us. And they bring him in because he's supposed to be the Godzilla specialist, but he does dick at helping them figure out what to do. But the American version does everything it can to make America look way better in this film. There's that scene in the middle where Godzilla is attacking Tokyo Bay, and there's that Russian nuclear launch boat just kind of like on the side. In the American version, they make it look like the Russian guy went to the bottom of the boat to purposely launch the missile instead of the version we watched where he was going to shut it down from launching and couldn't do it.
Wow.
Because
Well, I'll tell you, when I was watching this, I actually, and this is the first time I've seen this one.
this one, okay.
I thought, well, because, so Godzilla has attacked, it's taken out a Russian sub, all this is going on, and so you have the Japanese Prime Minister, a representative from Russia, a representative from the US, and Russia and the US are just saying, nuke him, nuke him, nuke him.
Yeah. They don't care what Japan went through with Hiroshima. They're like, just
Right.
we're gonna shoot fucking nukes at him. We got to get rid of him. And the Japanese Prime Minister is just like, we don't use nukes. We won't make them. We don't want them. You know. And he basically says, if Godzilla showed up in your country, and you asked us what to do, and we said to nuke you, how would you basically feel about that?
Would you nuke Moscow? Would you nuke Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
So the Prime Minister shuts that down. So we see this Russian guy go to that ship. I thought he was going to the ship to launch the nukes anyway.
Yeah. You think that when you first see it.
That's what I thought was going to happen. But he goes and he shuts it down. And then when Godzilla hits the ship, it somehow accidentally triggers it. And
yeah, it like I was gonna say it like short circuits the control panel somehow. Yeah,
right. And that guy he's injured, but he's still struggling to get down again back into that room to stop the nuke from launching. So the idea that the American version completely changes that.
Yeah, they actually shoot an extra. They shoot an extra part of that scene too, because in the version we watch, he just collapses to the floor. Like he's reaching to try and touch the button, but he doesn't make it. He just passes out. In the American re-edit, they reshoot kind of like the same area. You can tell it's slightly different, but they make like a control panel. They have red flashing lights, and they just film a guy with a hand going up and pushing the button.
And now, I'd never thought of this before. I always watch, if I can, I always watch foreign language films with the subtitles.
Yes.
Dubbing bugs the hell out of me. If I can avoid it, I will. And I had not thought about the fact that whoever's putting out the movie, essentially, I suppose, could make the subtitles say whatever they want.
Yep, and they did do
that. To a point. And I would have no idea.
Yep. They did do that in the American edit too. There's a ton of scenes where they cut a bunch of this film to make it also. I think they wanted to also have a slower runtime, or not a faster runtime. I'm sorry. They wanted to chop it up so it was kind of like, oh, if anybody in America is going to see this, we have to get this through the theater as many times as possible to make money, because these types of movies back then still weren't accepted as much as they are today, I would say. People saw Godzilla films and they're like, oh, that's that Japanese stuff. I don't really get that. So I'm not, kind of like when with the original, they had to put an American actor in, they had to film all these extra scenes, and they had to dumb down a bunch of it because, Americans, we don't want to hear about Hiroshima. We just, it's like, whoops. Oh, well. But so in this one, they did a lot of almost all of the dialogue. I'm going to be that bold to say almost all of the dialogue is completely different from this version that I watched with you. Even down to the most dumb thing that has nothing to do with anything. Like the scene with the gentleman who just goes into a restaurant while Godzilla is
I love that guy.
Wrecking the city. He's just like, I'm going to go into this fine dining restaurant and I'm going to have the fucking night of my life.
Yeah.
And in the American edit, they make him look like such a sleazeball, homeless vagrant guy. And in this one, he's just a Japanese guy. He's a businessman who's, I'm going to get my money's worth because, the getting's good. So why not?
I like when he's got his table set up.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if he just opens a bottle or actually pours the drink, and then maybe sees Godzilla, and he's like, you know what? I'm drinking the good stuff. And he goes and gets a bottle something
Yeah,
better.
that's such an. I love that scene just because of how stupid it is. Because he literally does. He sets the table up. It looks like a Viking banquet on this table he's going to sit
Yes.
down to. He even lit a candle, and he's pouring this drink. It looks like some kind of really expensive cognac or something. And he's like, "Yeah, this isn't strong enough for me. I got to get the good stuff." And then like Godzilla's just at the window, probably watching him this entire time. And he screams at the guy. The guy falls over and it's literally like telling him to fuck off. He's like, I got here first.
Yeah, this isn't your town.
Yeah, that's what he said. This isn't your town. Go back to the sea or something like that. I'm just like, man, even in the American re-edit, they still gave that guy balls in that scene. Because in the American thing, he's like, hey, you think you're such a big shot, you dick. You just got the town. Why don't you learn some manners? That's what he says to him.
Yeah.
I love that scene because it's just so like and there's nothing like that in any other Godzilla film to my recollection where somebody is literally just like, hey, the cops are busy, the army's dying, no, everybody got evacuated, I'm gonna go have the best dinner I've ever had in my life.
Yep. And he shows up again a little later.
Yeah, he shows up at the end. He's just like walking around with a bike with a basket on the front. This guy's the weirdest character.
But I love him.
Yeah. And like Godzilla's chasing him down. He stops to pick up a suitcase that he finds.
Yeah. He's like, oh, this one's nice and lighter.
Yeah.
So this one, starts out, I think the very beginning is very Godzilla movie like, at least in my, I have not seen every one, but we start with a boat on the ocean.
Yep. There's a storm.
Something happens.
Yep. There's like a volcano erupts or something. Right. It's like him coming out of the earth, essentially.
Right. Then we cut to the guy on the sailboat, the reporter.
Yes.
And when he finds that boat that we just saw, and he starts looking around and he's finding these bodies, that looked like could have been straight from like a slasher movie or something.
Yeah. You could tell that they were like trying to do different things throughout this entire movie. Because you're right. That whole boat scene, like it kind of gave me like Goonies vibes when the Goonies went, they found like Pirate Pete's gold and like they turn him around and it's just a skeleton guy. And that happens in this. He turns the one guy around and that's supposed to be, I guess, the radiation poisoning that they suffered from being that close to Godzilla, but I'm not sure if that's what that was supposed to be.
But at one point, the guy says they were sucked dry by the louse.
Right, and that's sea louse. We run into that later. Yeah, it's the giant sea louse, and he's mutated because he was riding along on Godzilla when he emerged. Which I find that this is one of the first Godzilla movies, again, to my recollection, where the first attack in the film necessarily isn't from Godzilla. It's from something like the sea lice.
Right.
And that's a really, even to this day, like I know it's a puppet, but every time I see this scene where it's crawling up him, I'm just like, ugh.
Oh yeah.
Because I've got arachnophobia. So like, I'm just picturing that crawling and you feel, because it looks wet and slimy and it probably smells and
it's leaving that white vomitous trail.
Yeah.
Ugh, that was
so gross.
Disgusting.
Yeah. But then he gets saved because a guy that he finds on the boat, because for some reason, this is the only guy he decides to actually check his pulse too, which I thought was kind of funny. But
it might be the only one that didn't look desiccated. So
it's true. He did look the least like dead. So I'll give him that credit then. But he finds this guy who's alive and he decides he needs to get him off the boat. Then he gets attacked. And the guy that he finds then like uses an axe and hits the sea lice and kills it. So then they're kind of like, he's bandaging him up on the boat. And I think they called in a helicopter and they come and helicopter picks up the brother at least. And then they're detaining him. We find that out a little bit later because the reporter ends up talking to him. But the reporter is writing a story about Godzilla because the guy that he saved told him all about it. He said, he rose from the ocean. He was huge. It had to be Godzilla. So he writes the story. The newspaper tells him no. No, we're not. If we print your story, the whole nation's going to go into a fit of panic, and we just can't have that. And he starts snooping around, and they tell him to go to this doctor, Dr. Yamane, because he's the one doing the lead research on Godzilla, which I thought was also interesting because in this universe's timeline, we're negating everything that happened up till this point.
Okay, that's what I wanted to ask if you were aware, because it has the feel of basically like Halloween 2018.
Yeah.
Where this is a direct sequel to the original and ignoring everything in between.
Yep. That's exactly what this is.
Now, do you know, because the professor says he was a kid and survived the original Godzilla attack. Is that the same actor from the original?
I couldn't tell you that one, no. I couldn't tell you. They've had return actors from the first movie, because there's when you get to Godzilla versus Destroyer, they bring up the oxygen destroyer weapon again, and they're using that because Destroyer was basically created from a scientist making another oxygen destroyer, and this species decided to thrive from it. So you have descendants and actors that were in the first film of Dr. Shirazawa in that movie. So that's kind of cool. Like, they do that from time to time, but to my knowledge, they didn't bring anybody from the first movie into this one. But like you said, it is like from Godzilla Raids Again up until whatever the last one, which was probably Destroy All Monsters. All those movies do not exist in this universe. So it also makes me wonder how much money the Japanese government would still be funneling into a research for Godzilla when he hasn't been around
for 30 years.
30 years. Like, I mean, I guess it's a good idea to just have a contingency, but I mean, this doctor has a huge office, so yes. I don't know.
Seems to have quite a few people working for him.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really liked is, as you said, the government has basically quashed the story. The reporter is told by his editor, no, we're not doing this. The government's put a gag order on all of this.
Yep.
But after the Russian nuclear sub is attacked and destroyed, and Russia is blaming the U.S., the U.S., of course, is rattling their sabers at Russia, and it looks like everything's headed towards a possible nuclear conflict between the United States and Russia.
Yep.
The Japanese prime minister steps up and says, no, we know your sub wasn't destroyed by the U.S. or anything else. It was Godzilla. He didn't want to release the information. He was worried about a panic.
Yep.
But this greater threat essentially has come up, and he's willing to step up and release the news now that Godzilla has been seen and is out there. And I liked that a lot, because they could have gone the other way and just been like, nope, we're keeping our mouth shut.
They absolutely could have. Yeah. And that Russian scene's another interesting thing of dialogue that's different between the 85 American re-edit and this. Is in this one, they kind of basically straight up play it as in the Russians assume, because they catch this blip on their radar while they're just trolling around in the water, and they're like, it has to be an American sub. There's nobody else that's out in these waters, and I guess if they're going to come at us, then we're going to stop them. It's straight out. They're just like, it's an American sub. We're just going to take it down because they're not supposed to be here. And in the American re-edit, they're just like, I don't know what that could be. Maybe it's a whale. And then they just shoot at it.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed this edit, because even in the 80s with the American edit, there was still, the Japanese edit, there was still some small bits and bobs that weren't in this one. So that's really cool that this is almost like a perfect mesh of the two, but it cuts out all the stupid American scenes that They do not add anything to the film at all.
Right.
But so yeah, the sub goes down and the prime minister's like, yeah, they have all these underwater sonar pictures and it's clearly Godzilla, and he's there looking at it like, son of a bitch, like this again. Because he even said, he's like, that's a name I wish, I haven't heard in so long, and I was hoping to never hear it again. And I find the press conference when the one government official just says straight out, he's like, it was Godzilla. A lot of the people in the crowd weren't that like, if I was there and you had some government official be like, there is this hundreds of thousands of year old dinosaur it emerged from the sea and it's going to destroy us. I'm like, why are we sitting here? I don't think I'd be as calm as some of those people were, but so yeah, the news gets out. So now they're basically scrambling to figure out, can they contain Godzilla if he decides to attack Tokyo? Because they know he's just going to come back to Tokyo because it's his home, essentially. There was a worry there was like a small bit in the film where they were discussing if it would go anywhere else. And if it did that, what would happen? But they're like, no, he's just going to stick to familiar waters. And I think even Professor Yamane said that. He's like, he's not going anywhere. And he's the only person through the entire film to keep saying all the efforts that they're going to do aren't going to take him down. They're not going to kill him. So we had that scene. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, they're putting together the special Super X.
Yes, the Super X. Yes,
and with cadmium rounds, and he's just like, that's not going to work.
Yeah, that the Super X is the one thing where you get that feel of how the movies kind of were back in the Versus era, because they had the weird stuff like you had your jet Jaguars and stuff like that back then. This movie's like, we made this UFO that's going to shoot like cadmium bullets. It's got all this heat shielding, and Godzilla won't be able to do anything against it. And I'm like, this is where we at now, like the 20th film, and how many times have you guys won against Godzilla? Yeah. You should really stop thinking you're gonna beat him. But the Super X is really cool in this film. I like its design because it's very futuristic, but it's also very 80s at the same time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because like they make it look like a ship, but it's also just like it's subdued in a way. But the inside of it is just so 80. Like there's analog knobs everywhere. There's screens over everything. There's just red lights for no reason. I feel like it would be so much more of a detriment to even pilot this thing that it wouldn't be effective against fighting Godzilla.
But well, it is semi-effective.
It is. It is.
It does knock him out for a short time.
Did you notice though, when they bring the ship in, and I guess maybe I never paid that close attention at this point, but when they bring it in, they fly in and they're kind of like reverse of him. They have to spin it around like 360 degrees, and then they're looking like dead at him.
I don't know if I noticed that.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like that's what I remember from the film right now, because I know they had a part where they spun the screen around and then they're looking at him.
They came in from the wrong angle.
Yeah.
One of the things that surprised me, because I would guess, not an expert, I would guess the majority of the 800 or 900 films, Godzilla is a defender of the Earth.
Yeah,
and he is much like the first film, or just like the first. He is a straight up monster. Mm-hmm. The death toll in this movie has to be astronomical.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm assuming there's a scene with cars jam packed on the highway or whatever it would be, that he just fries and they are burning.
Oh yeah, it's just like a domino like of explosions going down the highway.
And I was like, okay, so am I supposed to believe that all of those cars are abandoned because everybody ran, or are there people in all of those cars?
There could have been, man.
And there's
and
no question. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's the thing. They they have a lot like in the 60s and 70s. That's when he was like the defender of Earth. They did all the Versus movies, and it's so funny to see like for the first movie, he's a force of nature, he's a byproduct of nuclear bombs, and he's there as a check and balance essentially. And then you have all those fun ones that are kind of geared towards kids, and then you get to this one, and they're just we're gonna make him a killing machine again. It's just like flicking a light switch off and on. And I kind of wonder if there were people like back then, if there were people that were excited because they grew up with the 70s version where he's like, he saves Earth. And then we're going straight into this where he's just killing everything, you know?
Well, there's, like I said, there's a question about the people in the cars. There is no question about people in the train.
Oh yeah. And that was an homage to King Kong.
Right.
That I guess that was 78, the remake they did with I think that was 78.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's straight up. Those people are dead.
Oh yeah. He just like looks in there, he's like, and just tosses it aside.
And I liked at one point we could see basically it looks just like cutout silhouettes of people in the windows.
Oh yeah. It looked like one of those like H-gauge model Christmas tree like train cars. You had just like little black silhouettes. Yep. I mean, and that's the other thing I will give this movie a lot of props for is the miniatures when they're not right up in your face like that train car.
Right.
They're really, really well done. A lot of the cityscape and skylines and like the buildings you see in the background, the lighting they did for just random rooms that are, lit up at night. It's really, really well done. And I couldn't imagine being that guy in the suit and they're just like, we just want you to just run through this and we're going to blow shit up. And like,
yeah. Well, when he's smashing buildings. Now, I did read something that said, I don't know if this is true. Don't always trust everything on the internet, kids.
Right.
I did read that they added like something like 30 meters to his height.
Yes.
Because of obviously the size of buildings in Tokyo grew.
Yeah.
From the first movie to this one, and they didn't want him being dwarfed now by the much taller buildings, so they added to his height. But especially when Super X knocks him out,
yeah,
and he falls into that building, and is sort of napping. I thought that looked great. I thought the way the building crumbled and just part of it, and he's sort of in it, almost snuggled up.
Yeah, because you see the floors, the different segments of floors in the building that he's just like laying against, and when he hits it, it looks like there's concrete blocks falling on him, and there's like rebar and stuff coming out of it. There's sometimes with these films where they shoot stuff and it's so well done that I can't be convinced that it didn't really happen. Because I don't know, like they do such amazing miniature work. Some of it I think rivals the stuff we do here in the States. And this film I feel is a really good example of that.
Yeah, fantastic. And again, so many things, at least my expectations, that weren't met in a good way. Like the professor, the reporter, and the ship survivor's sister.
Yes.
Are in the city. They're working on their own plan. And when Godzilla attacks, they're kind of stuck there. And then ship survivor guy is on a rescue helicopter.
And yes, that scene. Yep.
And they do that, and they only rescue one person.
Yeah.
They get the professor, and they get the ship survivor guy. Can't remember his name. He makes it back up to the helicopter, but they're just like, the turbulence is too much, and they leave the reporter and the sister behind.
Yep. I
was just like, this is the scene where they're rescued. Come on.
If we bring him back up again, I think his name was Kenshiro, possibly. I know in the American edit they just call him Ken, so we can just call him Ken if that helps you. I don't remember his name completely either. I just know that he's that girl's brother, And
Right.
yeah, but yeah, and that scene's so strange too, because the professor's plan, which I'm really surprised the government even went along with this plan. Now, granted, we learned the science behind this, and we're kind of like, yeah, this would be so much better than blowing everything up. But it's also so far out there that I don't know how anybody would have bought it. But they find out that Godzilla in this movie follows bird frequency, like bird call frequencies. And you see it at one point in the film where he's attacking a nuclear power plant. It's the first time he comes on land. And then just this flock of birds comes by, and he just decides to put his Lunchables down and follow these birds, which even as a kid, I was kind of like, well, that's strange. He's, for all intents and purposes, a lizard, but okay, whatever,
You can do the mental gymnastics to the whole, well, he's basically a dinosaur, and they now say dinosaurs were birds.
Yeah.
So maybe, but that's, we don't want to think that much. Yeah, the professor says he's migratory.
Yeah, he says he's migratory. So they learned that they can control him with bird frequencies. So his plan was, we're going to zero in on the frequency. We're going to lead him to Mount Mahara because it has an active volcano in it. We're going to drop him in and then just blow it to hell.
Well, I do believe the professor says we can't. I'm trying to remember how he put it. We can't kill him. We can't defeat him. All we can do is try to contain him.
Yep.
Essentially.
So his idea was, we're going to get him into this volcano, collapse it in on him, and he's just going to live in molten lava for however long until the next film, because we need another film.
Now, to be fair, I do think that the professor's plan was the government's B plan. They were relying on Super X to take him out.
And the prime minister even said that. He's like, well, Super X is what we're going to go with. We'll go with both plans, though. Like, he just kind of gives him that like pat on the head, like, you did okay. We'll do it too. You go ahead.
I kept laughing. They had that command vehicle at the volcano.
Yes.
That every time I saw it, I just thought I was looking at like a food truck.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
The sides of it opened up. One part went up, one part went down. I'm like, did they bring a food truck to the volcano?
Well, even to this day, I see that and I'm like, what effectiveness does it have being open versus closed? I don't understand.
They have a better view of Godzilla standing at the volcano. I don't know.
I guess, yeah. That is a really odd truck. It really is, and yeah. That maybe they had an El Taco pull up and
they commandeered it.
They're like, hey, we could get this El Taco truck and put half of our command center in here, and then Taco's out of the other one. Oh man! So, and that scene where they learn that they got the right frequency, because they have the reporter guy holding up basically what just kind of looks like a video camera, but it has a sonar dish on the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's intensifying the frequencies, and the whole, like, they're going to war with Godzilla outside of their building at the same time where they're trying to do this, and they get him to turn around and look at him. And at that point, I would have shit my pants.
Yeah, that is not what I want to happen.
No. And the doctor's just like, we did it. We got it. And I'm like, get the fuck out of there. He's looking at you.
You do not want to be noticed by Godzilla.
No. Yeah, it's interesting how they came up with the science, because they do that in almost every Godzilla movie. There's the scientific angle as to how we're going to get him to go away, at least, versus the military constantly just killing all of its members. This one seemed, out of a lot of them, even the most far-fetched to me. Just from the whole thing of, I'm going to find all these bird frequencies and we're going to get the right one. And I have like no time to figure this out because Godzilla's here, but we just happen to get it. And we're controlling this giant walking death machine.
Well, to be fair, I think there are only 3 bird frequencies in the world. So
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't
How hard could it be?
wonder which one they landed on. It'd be like something weird, like a robin or something.
Yeah. We haven't talked about the, I don't know if you'd call it a subplot, what it would be, but the fact that we touched on it a little bit, but the Russians accidentally launch a
Yes.
nuke.
Yeah. So yeah, the nuke gets
And
launched. And
then fortunately, USA comes to the rescue.
yeah.
The US government does agree to try to take it out before it gets to Japan. And so this is the point where Godzilla has been knocked out by Super X,
Yes.
taking his little snooze, curled up in the building. The US missile takes out the Russian missile, but it still explodes in the stratosphere. And then we have our Frankenstein moment.
Yes.
Godzilla is struck by lightning, and that wakes him up.
Yep. And I guess it's nuclear lightning because
Yeah.
it gives him like his powers back. And I don't know if they mention it in this one. It was in the American edit. When he comes back, they're like, he's even stronger now than he was before. I don't think they mentioned that in this one, but I do remember that in the American edit. Like somebody mentions that they're like, the Super X has got to get out of there. He's even more powerful than he was before. And I'm like, well, what are you using to measure that?
Oh, and he was vindictive.
Oh yeah.
So when the Super X crash lands ish,
Yeah,
and
because
he
the
just
explosion
knocks a building on it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. They're out when when round 2 starts again anyway, because when the nuclear explosion goes off in the stratosphere, it kills a lot of the electronics.
Right.
So
There's
they're
an
trying
EMP.
to yeah, it was an EMP. So they're grounded and they get this call. They're like, Godzilla's up. And they're like, shit, we're like 20 feet away from him. So I don't know what they do, but they're just like pushing a bunch of shit and then it gets back on. And they have what I can consider one of the coolest pew 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 fights I've ever seen in a movie, because the Super X is literally throwing everything it's fucking got at him. There's rockets, there's lasers, there's machine gun fire. Like they're bobbing and weaving between buildings and stuff.
Right.
And then Godzilla hits them with a beam once and they just go down.
Yeah, it does. They do say we're out of the cadmium rounds, and they're like, use conventional weapons, whatever it takes. They were shielded. He had hit them before with his nuclear blast, and they were okay. But now they're, after the EMP and everything else, yeah, he hits them again. They're out. They sort of crash land. So they're out of the fight. And Godzilla still just walks over and literally pushes a building down on top of them.
I love that scene. It's so well shot too, because it looks real.
Yeah.
And he literally just goes up and shoulder checks the building. It crashes. And then this whole time that's going on, we've got the reporter and the scientist's daughter. They're trying to like rappel down this building because they were still stuck in it and the helicopter left them there. They're trying to get to the ground floor, get out. They throw this rope down, and that's when our famous business/homeless man is just strolling on by, which I'm like, why would you be in this neighborhood with this going? Like, he had to have seen that entire Super X fight and just was strolling around on the ground. Like, just like, wow, look at that.
He's got to be the most zen character ever.
I know, he didn't care about anything.
Just like, I'm just going to live my life. I'm not going to let any of this dictate what I do.
Yep. So they throw that, like, I guess bed sheets or rope down, and they like, here, hold this for us. Yeah, fire hose. That's what it was. And they're like, here, hold this for us. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever.
Okay.
They're all down on the bottom. Like, that building falls. There's just smoke everywhere. And Godzilla literally just like looks up over the building, is staring right at him, and just growls. And they're all just standing there looking. I'm like, no, how the hell? I would have gone back up or something. I don't know. But we do have a scene where, it's like 3 seconds, but our business/homeless man, he gets his new briefcase that he just finds, like, oh, that one's nicer. And then he's running, and like Godzilla is behind him, just towering.
Yes.
And he trips and falls. And we're left to assume that Godzilla kind of stomps on him, but all we see is he just kind of passes out.
Right.
And it's just left up to your interpretation. In my head, Godzilla stomped on him just because he's so close. Why wouldn't have he?
See, I'd like to think the guy, I don't know. I'd like to think he went on to live a happy, zen-filled life.
Yeah, maybe Godzilla thought, he's like, this guy's kind of cool after all, If I was
He
him,
stood
I'd
up
probably
to
go eat. Yeah, he did.
I may not agree with you, but I respect you, mister.
Yeah. They had a mutual agreement about each other's lifestyles.
So
it's just, yeah, and then everything looks like it's about to go bad for our two main characters, but then Godzilla just kind of stops because he picks up the bird call, essentially.
In the taco truck, they've turned it on.
Yep, they turned on the taco truck. The warming up the ground beef and the carne asada as we speak. And so he just kind of turns around and he starts making a beeline for Mount Mahara. And this is where the movie kind of starts playing off the whole, man versus monsters, and they don't say it straight out, but every Godzilla kind of movie kind of does this at one point, where they have that scene where you're kind of supposed to feel sorry for Godzilla because he's just a product of what made him be what he is. And these army guys and the scientists, they're all watching him basically make a death walk to this place where they're going to contain him for God knows how long, assumingly eons, they're hoping.
Mm-hmm.
So, they get him to the edge, and they just kind of, he's like, and that's another cool scene, is when he's on the edge of that volcano, and then they get that shot from behind him, and he's like looking down into it. I'm just like, how did they do this?
Yeah.
Like, this looks real. I don't know. But, and then in reality, they probably just had like a red light with some mist, and they put a Godzilla action figure like real close to the camera. And yeah, they had that. But so, yeah, and they blow the charges, the ground caves in, and he falls into the volcano, assumingly trapped, until Godzilla versus Biollante, though. Spoilers for anybody, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's it. And that is pretty much how it ends. Like, you hear him falling into the lava. They kind of make some different shrieks for him at this point. So it sounds painful as hell too, because his shrieks are really high pitched versus what he usually does. And everybody's just kind of looking on with like this somber look of just like, we did it. We don't feel great about it, but we're all safe for now. And the doctor he knows the whole time. He's even said it. He's like, this is not going to kill him. It's just going to hold him. He's going to come back. We can't stop Godzilla. So I love this film just because of seeing all the different versions is really fun. If you want me to, I could probably just, if you wanted to borrow it, I could mail you the American version if you can't find it. It's fun seeing
looking around first, but I may take you up on that.
Okay. It's an interesting juxtaposition. And in the American version too, there's a lot of Dr. Pepper placements, which is funny because at this time we got all those Dr. Pepper commercials with Godzilla in it, and that's why. So for better or for not, we have those commercials from this. So that's nice.
All right. But, before we move on to other Godzilla related stuff, but moving away from this particular movie, any final thoughts on this one?
If you haven't seen it, I implore you to go see it. I know there's a lot more Godzilla fans now just because of the current legendary MonsterVerse thing going on. But, and I don't know, hot take, those movies don't really even get into my top 10 of favorite Godzilla films. Like, they're good. They're good for what they are, but they're the American Hollywood byproduct of this is what we would do if we have Godzilla. I mean, they're far better than the 98 one by leaps and bounds, but yeah, I would definitely, if like, you found the Blu-ray, it's not even that expensive. You can get a copy of this film and watch it. It's It's my favorite. It will always be my favorite till I die. Yeah, please watch it if you haven't. You're missing out.
All right. Well, I grew up watching Godzilla.
Okay.
And I was going to mention it way back when, but we got all caught up in our Godzilla talk. I grew up having nightmares from watching horror movies as well, and it never put me off of watching horror movies.
I think it's a rite of passage, honestly.
But we had here in the Cleveland area, when I was growing up, we had two great things. On Friday nights, we had Big Chuck and Houlihan, which became Big Chuck and Little John. And it wasn't always horror, but they did this horror host kind of thing. They had little skits at the commercial breaks, and they would show horror movies, and then sometimes for like a month they'd show the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes, and then they'd go to the Hammer films, and then they'd do the Charlie Chan, and then they'd do this. So I always watched those Friday nights, and then on Saturday afternoons we had this guy Superhost.
Okay.
And he was the one, he would show more of the science fiction-y type of stuff. I think that's where I would see the Blob all the time.
Oh, okay.
Love the original Blob. But he was the one that would show just all the Godzilla films.
Nice.
So Saturdays, I would get to watch Godzilla films. So I've been a fan since I was a kid. I was going to ask your thoughts on the Roland Emmerich, but I think you've already made that clear.
I mean, I was in high school, I think, when that film came out, and I was hyped. I was really hyped for it. And this was in the early days of the internet. So the word of it didn't get around so quickly as it would have today. Like if that movie would have came out in, 2021, they would have had one good weekend and that would have been it. It's just when I saw because they did that iconic marketing strategy where they just showed bits and pieces. He's as big, his foot's as big as this bus, his head's as big as this billboard. It left that mysticism of like, oh my God, like he's going to be pretty huge, but what the hell does he look like? And then he looks like an iguana, and you're just like, what the hell is this? And they're killing him with conventional rockets. I don't know.
It not only is it not a good Godzilla movie, but if they had marketed it as just a giant T-Rex movie or a giant lizard movie that's not Godzilla, right, it's still not a good movie.
No, it checks boxes for monster movies, but it's not a good monster movie. Like you could have marketed this really as a remake of Reptilicus, and I would have believed it.
Yeah,
like that it was Godzilla for marquee value, and that even the Japanese make fun of this when they did Final Wars, Godzilla Final Wars. He had a fight with this thing. It lasted 3 seconds. He was fighting it in Australia. He knocked it into the amphitheater there and just blew him to hell. And that was it.
Yeah, exactly. Now the new ones, are you a fan of King Kong at all?
Oh, I love King Kong. I brought up this film because it was my introduction into horror essentially. Because I really didn't watch many horror films when I was younger, just because my parents were those types of people that didn't let me until I was like in my teens and stuff. So Godzilla was as close as I got. But my favorite film of all time is the original King Kong. The stuff that they did in that movie is unbelievable for the time period.
I grew up at the time when the only time you could and would see that movie was on Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
I grew up before VCRs or Betamax or any of that stuff. So I grew up in the era of you watch it when it's on or you don't see it. Right. And so they would show King Kong every Thanksgiving. And that's why I couldn't wait for Thanksgiving.
Man, they need to bring that back. That some channel needs to pick up that tradition again.
Yes.
Like seriously.
So of these new films, I will say I think Skull Island is a better introductory King Kong film than the new Godzilla is as an introductory Godzilla film.
I would agree with you on that. I'd even go as much of a hot take as that I think Skull Island is the best film out of the monster verse that they created thus far.
Well, I haven't seen Godzilla King of the Monsters yet, actually.
Okay.
Somehow
Okay.
I completely missed out when it was in theaters and just haven't gotten to it.
Okay.
But I did watch Godzilla versus Kong the day it premiered on HBO Max.
Same. Yeah.
And I thought it was fun. There's some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I did not realize, and I don't know if this is a part of Godzilla King of the Monsters, I didn't realize they had gone so far into the sort of G-force sci-fi elements where they had these ships that can fly to the center of the earth.
Well, see, here's the thing. They didn't have those in that film. They just appeared in that one, which was some of the stuff that was irking me. I'm like, you kind of can't just be like, oh, hey, we have this technology now. We can just go to the center of the earth. It's like, well, when did that happen? You know, even when that movie started, I'm like, how did you contain Kong in this biosphere?
I thought I had missed something.
No,
because I'm like, wait, what is, and I actually thought that I thought that all of Skull Island had been destroyed and they had him in some sort of habitat that they had made.
No, they just brought him over.
So yeah, I did not know what was going on with that part. And I was like, did I miss something in King of the Monsters? Like a post-credit scene or something?
Nope.
But I do, yeah, I really like Skull Island. And I do think that Godzilla versus Kong is fun.
Yeah.
I bought it. I have the Blu-ray somewhere.
Your DVDs probably look like mine. There's just so many of them. So it's just like, where the hell did I put that thing?
Well, I actually relatively recently cleaned up the collection and put them in order.
Mm-hmm.
But as I've been accumulating new ones, I don't have space, so now they're just stacking up in different places.
I'm at that point right now too. I have to get another bookshelf for books and for movies.
Oh, I'm looking directly at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 piles of books, plus a book cart that is completely filled.
Oh, jeez.
I need more shelves. Speaking of books, we're just gonna look at some stuff here.
Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit. I have these two.
Oh, sweet. Honestly, I think I have some of them around here somewhere. God, I don't know where they are.
I was looking online for there's 2 or 3 or 4 more in this series. They are expensive.
Yeah, I luckily came across 2 of them at yard sales for like $0.25.
Wow. I found these 2 at half price books, and they weren't too much. There was a third one that was outside my budget at the time, and by the time I had gone back, it was gone. But online, they're on eBay. I think the cheapest one I found, there was one for maybe $20.
Really?
Some of them going for 150, 180.
That's crazy. Yeah, I see one. It's over there. I'd have to get up and like walk off camera, but
they're fun. A lot of
oh yeah, they are.
And I don't know how well this will show up. I love the icons of the other creatures.
Yeah, it tells you like what monsters are going to be in the novel. Yeah.
And then each chapter has the little icons that'll tell you which ones are in that chapter.
Oh, that's really cool.
This chapter's focusing on this guy. So yeah, I believe this is the first one in the series.
Okay. And
then I don't know if this is the second or the third. Like I said, there's 4 or 5 of them in the series. And they're nice. They're embossed. They have a nice texture.
Hey, I love that stuff with books when they do cutout covers or embossments or like foil covers. Like those are awesome.
Oh, back in the day, the cutout covers, like Flowers in the Attic.
Yeah.
or so many of the great paperbacks from hell. It's like, oh, look at this nice innocent cover. Oh my God. I opened it up and there's something horrible inside.
Yeah. I was just
Uh,
looking. My copy of Flowers in the Attic isn't the cutout one.
Sometimes you get lucky at half price books. I got a first edition paperback.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I just found one of my Godzilla books. It's Invades America.
Nice.
I think this one is specifically a children's range because this one is just got
Okay.
Godzilla in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw there were some young adult ones or kids ones as well that I don't think were as expensive.
Probably not. No.
I don't know. I'll tell you, I'm going to show you some comic collections that I have here. But I'll tell you my Godzilla dream get
Okay.
would be the Marvel series. Marvel
Yeah.
Comics Godzilla series. I had it back in the
Ooh.
day. But twice in my life I've gotten rid of all my comics. So, and I assume because of rights issues, I don't think they've ever put together a collected edition of all the Marvel Godzilla issues.
I don't think so.
But I do have some from IDW. These are big honking books too.
Oh, yeah, the IDW stuff is so good.
So right here I've got, what is this? History's Greatest Monster.
Yeah, like look at the art on that.
Yeah, look at that.
I would pay a mint to get the oil paintings of that.
That has the little monster logos too.
Yeah.
But this has a story this is the complete series by Dwayne Swierczynski.
Oh.
Who is an author that I absolutely love. Love Dwayne Swierczynski. So this is the complete series for that. So that one there. And then I have this Godzilla Unnatural Disasters.
Oh, okay.
Which has
does that have Godzilla in Hell in it?
This has 3 series: Legends, In Hell, and Rage Across Time.
I thought I recognized that picture because that's from Godzilla in Hell, which is a really interesting read.
I haven't read that one yet. I used to have the issues for Rage Across Time. I gave them to my nephew when I got the collected edition, and I had read that one, which I thought was interesting, showing Godzilla in different periods of history.
Yep.
And sort of how he influenced myths and legends and things.
Yeah.
There's the back of that. And then the most recent one is Godzilla World of Monsters.
That's another good one. That I think is that's one of my favorite artists that does Godzilla art. He has really good pencil work and is very detailed.
And this has Gangsters and Goliaths, Cataclysm, and Oblivion. Cataclysm written by Cullen Bunn, again, one of my favorite comic writers. That dude is putting out so much great stuff right now. Is this an Arthur Adams? Arthur Adams is my favorite Godzilla artist.
Okay.
Let
me see.
Oh, James Stokoe says cover art by James Stokoe.
Yeah, James Stokoe is
who is fantastic.
Yeah.
But Arthur Adams, just the detail work in any of his art is fantastic. He did an adaptation of Creature from the Black Lagoon that's just beautiful.
Ooh,
it's amazing.
Now you're talking to one of my other interests. I love, out of the Universal monsters, Creature is one of my favorite.
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely my favorite of the Universal monsters. I had another game that I could have had a fake sponsorship for called, there's a game called Horrified. Are you familiar with that?
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic game. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. That's another game I'll have to throw on my roster now.
it's Frankenstein and the Bride, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy, Invisible Man, and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
That sounds awesome.
They're all in it. You pick which ones you're going to go up against. They all have different ways that you have to defeat them. It's a cooperative game. and it can be
Okay.
tough. It
I
can be
love
tough.
that.
There's actually a new edition that I've been having trouble finding. That's American Monsters is what it's called, but it's all cryptids.
Ooh, another
Yeah,
thing I love.
that one's got Bigfoot, Mothman, Chupacabra, the Wailing Lady,
Oh
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
And one or two more I can't remember. Oh, Jersey Devil.
Oh, nice.
And there's one more that I can't remember what it is, but um same basic gameplay as the original, but different creatures, different ways to defeat them, different characters that you play. They're a lot of fun.
I'll have to check that out too. Do you mind if I throw in a book here?
Hey,
Since
that's
we're
what we're
talking
here.
Godzilla books?
Yeah.
I just ripped this off my shelf. This is one of my favorite graphic novels they threw together was this is a huge book. Godzilla the Half Century War.
Nice. That looks
This
beautiful.
Yeah, this is another James Stocco, I believe.
Mhm.
Like just such great
Yeah.
pencil work. This story is basically I'll read you the back. The year is 1954 and Lieutenant Ota Murakami is on hand when Godzilla makes first landfall in Japan. So begins his obsession for 50 years. So this takes place in the original attack, and this chronologizes a lieutenant through 50 years of his life trying to take Godzilla down every time he makes landfall again. So it's from the human perspective, but you're right there in the middle whenever Godzilla attacks, and the art is amazing, and you actually really feel bad for the guys in this book because like I believe there's a point where he's sitting there kind of just thinking about life, and he's like, I spent my entire life trying to stop this that I didn't give myself a life, you know.
Is that from IW?
Yes it is.
All right. All right, that's all the little things I have to for show and tell.
Okay.
All right. So, do you have anything that you want to plug?
Sure. Like we mentioned earlier, my book Melancholia, I'm still plugging that whenever I can. Horizontal Volume 4. I'm not sure when this episode's going to go up, but if you're interested in it, I have one copy left that I'm selling for signed editions. You can find me on Twitter at Matt_Wildasin if you'd like to pick up that. I have two podcasts that we mentioned, the Ghost Riders podcast during this, and I have my other podcast is called Grindcast. I get together with two of my friends and we discuss pop culture news every week. That's every Monday. We have a new episode that goes up. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. And where can people, if you care to be found, where can people find you on social media?
I mostly use Twitter for my author accounts and just basically for most interactions with people that aren't family and close relatives and stuff like that. So as I said, at Matt_Wildasin is my Twitter handle. I post on there pretty often, mostly daily. So it's a good place to reach me.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for being here.
And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And if you could just stick around for a minute after I do my outro here, I just want to tell folks I will have links in the description below for where you can find Matt's books and stuff. And I don't know what the next episode will be, so I'll have that information in the description below as well. If you have any comments or questions, put them down in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. You folks know all the YouTube stuff. Again, thank you, Matt. And that's it for me. Until next time, folks, read more books.